And welcome to Scotty Kilmer Live Car Talk Podcast, where I use my 51 years of working on cars to answer all your car questions. Notice you don't see any ads flying over the place. Nobody sponsors it but the truth. I hate people getting ripped off, buying the wrong car, paying too much in repairs. You got a question? Ask it here. Remember, ask it during the live chat. Type them in there. I pick the best ones and I answer them. First question comes from John Favela, and he says, Scotty, I was looking to get a 60 to 69 VW Beetle as a weekend car and drive it around here and there. What's your thoughts on that? Okay, those were great cars back in the day. Now, if you are mechanically inclined and you can find a decent one, go right ahead. They can be fun. Just realize that, one, those old ones were rust buckets. So before you buy one, jack it up and look under. And if you say, oh, the frame is rotten and there's rust everywhere, walk away from it. Because if the frames are broken, they're worth absolutely nothing. But if it's still got a solid frame on it, they're simple vehicles. I did a video on a 67 Fastback to show you the 2 3/4 quarts of oil. You can change it without even jacking the car up in the air. They're cheap to maintain if they're in decent shape. You have to decide how far you're going to go on that. If you want to get one and fix it up yourself, and decide if you want a collector's item or not. If you go for a convertible, those are pretty collector's items. They go for a lot of money. With the hard tops, they don't go for all that much money. So if you want a collector's item, get a convertible, pay money and take care of it. If you just want to run around, get a hard top because they're a lot cheaper to buy. Next question is Cliff Towie, and Cliff says, Scotty, I got an '07 Matrix, the manual transmission. Accelerator is very touchy. It revs up too often. It needs too light a touch when accelerating. Okay, here's the problem. That was one of the early cars to have an electronic throttle. Now, you take older cars like my 94 Toyota Celica. It's got a throttle cable. You step on the accelerator, there's a cable on it. It pulls the cable. Then the cable opens the throttle on the intake to let more air in. Very simple design. Yours, on the other hand, when you step on your throttle, you're stepping on a basically computer mouse. That sends electricity to the computer. The computer sees what's going on and it decides how much electricity to send to the throttle assembly. That's an electric motor. Then it opens it as far as the computer tells it to open. Those can be very touchy systems. You just have to get used to. I mean, if you think the accelerator pedal sensor itself is worn out, then go buy another one and have that put on. Maybe it's just worn and it's too easy to touch. But a lot of times it's just you're not used to an electronic throttle, and that's how a lot of electronic throttles are these days. And almost all cars have electronic throttles now. Next question. David Haas says, Scotty, when are you going to buy a new used car? Well, I'll never buy a new car because it's a waste of money. You buy a new car, drive it off the lot, you're losing 50 to 60% of the value of the car. Me, I'll buy a used car when it's got maybe 8 or 10 years old. If it's a Toyota, say it's got 70, 80,000 miles, it can still have 80% of its lifespan. Well, I'd rather pay 20 to 30% of the original sticker with 80% of the lifespan than 100% of a new car because the price is just too high. But as for, am I going to get a new used car? I don't have any reason to. I got the Celica that runs like a clock, the Matrix that runs like a clock. My wife's got the Lexus that runs like a clock. And we generally fly everywhere on vacation anyway. And then we rent a car or use Uber when we're on vacation in big cities. So we really don't go any cross-country traveling. We do that with planes. Next question. Johnny Darter says, is there any truth that changing your transmission oil will lock up the tranny down the road? I got an '09 Pontiac Vibe, bought it with 90,000. Now it has 180,000. Drives great, but I haven't changed the transmission or coolant. Okay, well, you want to change them both. Realize that's really a Toyota. It's Toyota engine and transmission. And changing the fluid in them doesn't really damage anything because they're a different kind of transmission. But let's take an American car like a Chrysler or a Chevrolet. the older transmissions than those, and some of the new ones still, shed clutch materials, the automatic clutches. And when the fluid gets dirty, the only thing that's making them go is the dirty fluid because there's more friction, so it keeps sliding enough in the torque converter that it runs. If you put in new fluid on one of those that has 180,000 miles, it won't lock up. Usually what happens is it just slips and it won't go anywhere, or it won't shift gears right. So on those, you don't want to change. But on it, that's a Toyota product. Change that, and definitely change the coolant too. And use the Toyota coolant, the Holt coolant. It's much better. It lasts longer. Next question. Edgar Cervantes says, Scotty, what do you feel about a 1990 Nissan D21 pickup hardbody? I'm 18, it's my first car with 150,000 miles. Those were well made. See, back in 1990, that was 10 years before Renault took over Nissan. They were building pretty reliable vehicles. Back in the day, I had a lot of customers that had those old hard body pickups with 4-cylinder engines. And if they had standard transmission especially, oh, they were bulletproof. They could run a really long time. Now, yours is old. What are you talking about? You know, it's almost 20 years old. So, almost 20. When I say it's a 1990, it's almost 30 years old. So take care of it. You know, it's an old vehicle. Don't drive the heck out of it and burn everything out because it's old. But if you take care of it, you never know. It might last a long time. Next question is Zammer223. Scotty, how much does an automotive mechanic make a year, and is it enough to live off? Well, if you're a good one, it is. But here's the problem. If you're like me, I've been working on cars since I was 14. I learned from my grandfather at the corner Texaco gas station in Lewiston, New York. And so I was working when I was a kid on the weekends, and I was learning and watching my grandfather. If you're starting from scratch and you're working for somebody else, you got to build it up to make decent money. And of course, generally, the people that own the business are going to make the lion's share of the profit, not you as a mechanic. But if you get good enough, you can run your own business, you can make a very good living like I have, because then you're making all the profit. You're not sharing it with anybody else. You do have to learn how to do it. That's the thing. And they are getting more and more complex. But you can make a really good living, especially if you want to learn about electronics, because modern cars are all electronics filled. And if you like electronics, hey, work on modern cars. Figure out you can fix things that other people don't know how to. You can make a lot of money. Next question. Kyle Hansen said, I'm looking to buy a sedan or coupe. I'm wondering what your thoughts on Japanese versus current Korean cars, Kia, Hyundai, Dodge, Subaru, Chrysler, Honda, Toyota, Nissan. Thank you. Okay. If you're going to buy a sedan or coupe and you want it to last as long as possible, get a Toyota. Well, the Hondas are really good too, but the Honda automatics are a little weak. So if you can drive a standard, a Honda standard is just as good as the Toyotas. But I wouldn't buy a Honda automatic myself. Now, I would not buy a Korean car for one reason, that they're a lot better than they used to be, but they still aren't as good as the Toyotas or Hondas. People can give you all kinds of BS here and there. Oh, I have one and it's great, la, 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 la. Believe me, I'm a mechanic. I fix cars for a living. I really don't care to tell lies to people. I tell them the truth. This is a good car. This is a bad car. Now, some mechanics, they're going to be dishonest and they're going to say, yeah, buy that car knowing, oh, that thing's going to fall apart. I'm going to make a whole bunch of money. I'm not that way. I keep my customers happy. They come to me and I fix things that break from old age most of the time, unless they happen to have a Chrysler product or a Fiat product that really break out all the time. And then I tell them basically they should get rid of the car. I'm not dishonest and say, yeah, just keep it, and I'll keep making money fixing it. No, I'm not that way. And I don't advise you to buy them for that reason. Now, I do have customers that bought Kias brand new, the cheapest ones they could get their hands on, and we're happy with them, and they didn't have too many problems the first 100,000 miles. If you're like that and you want to spend that money on a new one, you can go right ahead. But as I said earlier, hey, I buy nothing but used cars. And if you're going to buy nothing but used cars, you're best to stick to Toyota and Honda. Next question. Tristan Martinez says, should I buy my parents' 05 Mercedes-Benz C240 4MATIC for $3,000 or buy an 06 to 09 Honda Civic? Some parents you have, they should give you the car. Those things are such money pits. They should give you the car and a few thousand for fixing it for the first year. But I mean, if you're gonna have to pay money, get the Honda because they're much better vehicles in the long run. They won't cost the money, and those 4MATICs, you're talking about an all-wheel drive Mercedes. Oh man, those things are expensive to fix. I got customers that are doctors and lawyers and had those things, and even they got rid of them because they said it was costing them too much money to fix as they wore out. Get the Honda Civic. You'll have more fun in it, and the insurance will be cheaper. You're better off with that. Next question. Swaggle says, Scotty, I'm going to buy a Mazda MX-5 1.8 Mark 1 or Mark 2. I was wondering, what are the common issues? If I'm going to modify it, since I'm a tuning fan, I'm going to also drive it 4 days a week. Okay, the old Mazdas were actually excellent vehicles. That said, don't buy one with an automatic transmission. The automatic transmissions were horrible on those things, and they don't have much fun to drive. They're slow. But if you're talking about a standard transmission, you can buy any of them. They were all well made. Now they're older, so you still want to get them checked out. You want a mechanic like me to check it out before you buy it, unless you're buying it dirt cheap for $400 or something. And we check the engines and the electronics and make sure that it's in decent shape, because anybody can not take care of a car and burn the engine out from not changing the oil. But those things can be a lot of fun for driving around in. And I mean, if you have the money to buy a new one, go right ahead. It was rated the fourth most reliable car of 2018, but that's awful expensive. And you're talking about the older ones anyways. Next question. One broadcast says, Scotty, please help me, in big caps. My Oldsmobile Arrow's horn started to go off constantly in the morning until I removed the negative battery cable. What could be the cause? Okay, knowing those things, it's almost always the horn assembly on your steering column is breaking down and it's shorted to power, and you got to take all that apart, which is going to cost you a lot of money if you pay a mechanic. So what a lot of guys do, and I've shown them, I even have videos on it, is you can just go to where the horn is. You hear it blaring, so you know where it is. Take the power wire off, unplug it, then it'll stop beeping. Then run a wire from the power wire to the horn, run it to a switch. You can buy like a doorbell switch, the hardware. You can mount on your dash. Then run that other wire to the battery positive terminal, put like a 10 amp fuse or something on it, and that's your new horn. It's legal. You push it and it beeps the horn, unless you want to take the whole steering assembly apart in order to fix it, because that's usually the part that breaks. And it's totally legal to have a little doorbell to beep your horn on the dash. It passes inspection, and it costs you maybe $10 in materials if you do it yourself. Next question. Joe G says, I have an '06 GMC van, 6-cylinder, 150,000 miles. I used regular oil from new. It runs great. I want to switch to synthetic. Is it okay? Can I get more oil time between when I have to change the oil? You know, I wouldn't. You say it runs great. I would not change anything. Engines have a tendency of getting used to the oil that's in them. If it's used regular oil for 150,000 miles, if you change the synthetic, I've seen guys do that, and they either start leaking oil or start burning oil. It flows better. The synthetic oil flows better. Now, if you have a car and you use synthetic oil from the get-go, that's perfectly fine. But I do not advise to switch back and forth. Stick to what is in it and leave it at that. You're not having any problems. Don't create a problem by putting synthetic oil in. And I've had people do that, and then I told them about it, and they said, oh, we wish we'd never done that in the first place, and we'll never do it again. So leave what's in it. Next question. Kyle Hansen says, Scotty, what do you think about Mazda's new Skyactiv? Good or bad? Well, bad as far as I'm concerned, because I have to fix those things. And they've had a lot of problems with it as they age. It's a very high level of technology. Mazda's a company that's known for making cars with high tech that later fell apart. A perfect example of that is their rotary engines. They kept trying putting rotary engines in. When I was young, they had the Cosmos, which backfired like mad and got like 5 miles a gallon for a little bitty car. Then they made the RX-7s. Then they made the RX-8s. And then they stopped using the Wankel rotary engines because they kept trying to fix them, and they always kept burning oil and ruining the seals on the apex of the 3 corners where they had to seal those rotors. They do a lot of technology, and a lot of it's failed, and I'm not a fan of that Skyactiv technology. I mean, you can get good gas mileage and get power out of it, and if you're the type of person that buys a brand new car and gets rid of it when it's got 60, 70,000 miles, you'll probably be happy with it. But if you keep them forever, no, it's not the greatest technology in the world, because it does have a tendency of breaking down and costs an awful lot of money to fix when they do break. Next questions. Elgar Novalik. Scotty, I got an '06 Honda Odyssey that makes a high-pitched whirring noise every time I start the engine when it's really cold. Any idea what it could be? Okay, the first thing you want to do is take the fan belt off the car first. Take all the fan belts off. Start it. If the noise goes away, you know it's something one of the fan belts drive. Then you just have to figure out which one. You could get a stethoscope, and when it's whirring, put it on each one at a time. See if it's the alternator, power steering. A lot of times that's what it is. You want to pray that the noise goes away, though, when you take the fan belts off, because if it doesn't, that means that when you start it up, there's something in the engine or the transmission that's whirring internally. And that stuff can get really expensive really fast. And a lot of those Odysseys had cam problems, and those cams cost a fortune to replace. If it wasn't the engine or transmission, my advice would be get rid of the vehicle rather than spend the money on it, because that's going to cost many thousands of dollars to fix if it's in the engine or the transmission. Next question. Roll Woder says, Scotty, you talk a lot about cars, but tell me about motorcycles. Well, I've been a biker since I was a teenager. I know a lot about motorcycles. I like motorcycles. I have a Kawasaki Z1000 2010. Is that a sound motorcycle? What is your experience? Oh, yeah, those Kawasaki 1000Zs, those are screaming motorcycles. They're very strongly built, too. Kawasaki makes very well-built, very fast motorcycles. That's the way that they are. They also make little rickshaw things that they use in China and India for carrying people around, but, they make really good high-end fast motorcycles. That's a good motorcycle to have. Now, the main thing you got to watch out for that is yourself. Keep your brain from getting too excited, going too fast, and killing yourself by losing control. Those bikes generally go too fast for the ability of that person driving it to control it, because they are such powerful machines. It's not, when I was a young mechanic, hey, it was something to have a motorcycle that had 45 horsepower. Now some of these things, they're pushing 200 horsepower. It's just insanity. It's beyond the ability of a normal human to control if you go full speed all the time. Next question. Perla Martinez says, Scotty, what brand oil and filter you recommend for my 99 Camry? Okay, most oils in the United States sold are excellent oils. That's an old vehicle. I use Castrol oil, Castrol, in all my Toyotas. I always have. I just like the stuff. I've never had problems with it, so I just put in regular Castrol oil, and it works perfectly fine. As for the oil filters, I use the high-end oil filters, the premium oil filters. Now, the thing is, there's only like 3 or 4 companies that even make them, like the Mobil One, the Pennzoil. They don't even make filters. Fram makes them for them. So as long as you're buying high-end oil filter, they're the best ones. And don't go to the discount oil stores and buy them, because a lot of times those discount auto parts stores, they mark up their premium filters way too much. I personally buy my own on Amazon. I look for the lowest price for a good premium, like a Bosch one or a Pennzoil, whatever, as long as it's the premium filter. And I get them for like $5 a piece instead of the 10 to 15 they charge at the auto parts store. So it doesn't matter where you buy them, they're the same company making them. Next question. Xavier Cardenas says, Scotty, I got an '01 GMC Sienna Sierra, 4.8, single cab truck with oil pressure needle pegged at 80 psi. What could be the problem? Oil level is good, doesn't show any leaks, and has 120,000 miles. Okay, here's the thing. You want to make sure that that isn't real, that it's really got 80 psi. So if you don't have one, pay a mechanic like me to remove the oil pressure sending unit and to screw in an actual pressure gauge. All we mechanics have actual pressure gauges, and you can buy them online cheaply enough, 40 or 50 bucks. Put a real oil pressure filter on, see what the actual pressure is. Now, if you find the oil pressure is actually 90 psi, don't drive it anymore, because that means that you have a restriction somewhere. Now, you might think, high oil pressure, what do you mean restriction? Well, if you get a restriction somewhere beyond where that gauge is, the pressure before the restriction is going to go high, and then after that restriction, the pressure is going to be too low and it's going to damage your engine. So you want to see if you actually have that high a reading. I doubt if you do. It's probably just a false reading. But you got to check it with a gauge. And if it does really have too high, stop driving it and find out where the problem is, because somewhere you got a real bad restriction that's making the lower pressure go high. And then after that restriction, it's too low and you're going to get engine damage. Next question. StreamSet says, how easy it to replace a fuel injection spider on a 99 4.3 GM Vortex engine? Am I better off doing a job myself or paying somebody qualified to do the job? Okay, it is a gigantic job because you have to take the whole intake manifold assembly off. And when you do that job, not only do you have to buy all new gaskets and stuff, but you need all new rubber seals for the entire system. And you want to replace all of the plastic spider assembly and the injectors. You don't want to guess and change one number 3 and a number 5, but not do number 6, because then when you put it back together, odds are something is going to leak. Now, if you're mechanically inclined, it can be done. You can buy books or get online advice that shows how to do it step by step, and you could do it if you really want to. But realize it takes a lot of time, and it's a very involved job that may take you days to do. You might price it with a mechanic and see what they're going to charge. But anybody could do it. You know, you just need normal hand tools and a torque wrench. You'd have to buy a torque wrench to set the nuts right on the intake. But it can be done. It's just a matter if you want to go that far or not. Next question. Hannah Bakuto says, 3 speakers okay for a car? Well, you get as many speakers you want. Jeez, I was reading about some modern car for 2020, and they said this car has 24 speakers in it. I'm like, oh man, they're really going wild with the sound stuff. You can put any amount of speakers you want in a vehicle, you know. Like some guys might put 2 speakers that are regular speakers and then a big bass, and that would sound okay. It's just, you know, what kind of sound do you want? I'm not a big audiophile. I'm half deaf anyways, but the guys that are really into it will put tweeters, different range ones, and regular mid-range and bass speakers, and put all kinds of speakers, and put a big subwoofer in the back. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do if you really want to. And if you don't mind the sound, you know, you can do whatever you want. Next question. Georgie Awanta says, Scotty, Happy New Year. What's the best German engine? Okay, well now, in terms of horsepower, the German engines, a lot of them are excellent engines. They put out a lot of horsepower. But if you're talking about what's the best for longevity, I would say a Mercedes-Benz diesel engine, because I recently got back from Europe. And man, those guys are driving Mercedes diesel engines and everything from taxi cabs to police vans to garbage trucks to even ice cream trucks. And they all had Mercedes diesel engines in them. I mean, those are really well-built engines. They're solid engines. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that over here in the United States, most of the Mercedes are luxury cars with gasoline engines in them. They're really expensive to maintain. The parts cost a fortune, and they deliberately design them so only real Mercedes specialists can have the $25,000 tools to work on the things. Next question. Fernando Navarro says, Scotty, would you buy a 2009 RX 350 Lexus for 10 grand with 100,000 miles? Okay, well, I bought my wife's ES 300 for 4 grand with 60,000 miles. So I would try to pay less. But if you like the vehicle and you can't get any lower, go ahead. You still want a mechanic like me to check it out to go through all the tests. But those are pretty solid vehicles. I've seen those things with 250,000 miles, still had original engines and trannies and ran pretty good. So, if you don't mind the price and the mechanic says it's in good shape, go right ahead. I would just try to pay less because you're not getting any guarantee on it. And, you're talking about an 11-year-old car. So if you can't get them any lower and you like it, go ahead. They are good cars. Next question. Dong Army Strangler says, are Dodge Caravans of the devil? If you owned one, you might think that. I mean, the old joke goes that why do they make Dodge Caravans so they can hold 8 people? And the answer is so 7 of them can get out and push while the driver turns the steering wheel so they can get somewhere. Oh, they had so many problems with the transmissions and other things. I mean, they had a design that the soccer moms loved, though, and they sold a lot of them. But in terms of long-term vehicles, no, they're too many expenses and they break down. You could, if you would have bought, say, a Toyota Sienna van versus a Dodge Caravan, you would probably get 10 times the mileage on the Toyota than you would get on a Caravan and not spend 1/50th of the money you'd have to spend maintaining the thing and repairing things as they broke. Next question. Tony Castro says, 2009 Ram 1500 with a 5.7 Hemi. Mechanically okay, should I stay away? Well, those are good engines. Have the engines checked out. You just have to realize the rest of the vehicle, they have ball joint problems. They get electronic problems. They have air conditioning problems. Now, it's, it's an 11-year-old Dodge Ram truck. They don't go for that much. They don't have that much resale value. If it checks out okay when a mechanic looks at it and you're not paying that much, might not be a bad thing for a in-between vehicle. Excuse me, but don't expect to buy something like that and put a lot of trouble-free miles and not put a lot of money in fixing it. That's just how those things are. Alberto Maya says, what do you think about the Ford Bronco? Okay, I know all about the Ford Broncos. The Ford Broncos really started the first SUV movement. And they were the first ones to put all-wheel drive on something besides just a pure truck. And they kept putting bigger engines in them. And they were interesting vehicles. I mean, I had customers that had them in the past. They loved them. A lot of guys are fixing them up. They become collector's items. And, the gas hogs are no ifs, ands about that. But the old ones, they were really simple technology, easy to fix. You could drive them forever. And if you live in an area that does emissions testing every year, they don't test the old emissions one much at all. So you don't have to worry about getting your car inspected every year, paying a bunch of money because it doesn't have to be tested. The ones here in Texas, if it's more than 25 years old, you don't need to do emissions testing. So they can be very inexpensive to drive and maintain. Next question. Wakar Yaved says, my Toyota Corolla 2012 1.3 manual tranny starts at a high RPM about 25 to 3,000 RPMs, comes back after 2-3 minutes. What's the issue? Okay, well, it's 8 years old. Could just be your throttle's got some carbon in it. I've got a video called Make Your Car Run Better with a Little Spray Cleaner. Just type that in a Google search. It'll come up in a YouTube video. And you can watch the video. The cleaner costs you like $15 for the 2 cans. Do it yourself, and you'll see it'll probably go right back down because it should clean it. If it doesn't, you got a vacuum leak. You can check for vacuum leaks, but generally you can clean it and it will go back to normal. Next question. Wiggle Via says, howdy from Austin, Texas. I drive a Volvo S70 GLT with 212,000 miles. I had lots of fun doing suspension, interior, and engine repairs. What do you think of the S70s? Oh, those things were killer cars in the day. That was the last time that Volvo made really solid, dependable vehicles that weren't European endless money pits. You know, the Chinese own them now. I believe that Great Wall Company bought them out. And they say they're only going to be making hybrid and electric cars in the future. But those old Volvos, man, they could run forever. I had a customer with one had 500,000 miles. It was still running pretty good. And if you don't mind, like you don't seem to be, fiddling around with yourself and fixing stuff, hey, you can keep fixing them and drive them forever. You live in Austin, they're not going to rust in Austin, Texas. It's so freaking dry there. You're in a semi-desert area that it won't rust. That the thing could last forever. Well, that's it for this week. Remember, every day of the week, I put up 2 videos on YouTube on the Scotty Kilmer channel. So subscribe. You'll never miss another one. And hit that notification bell so you always get notified. And I'm here on YouTube Live Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time answering your questions. And Saturday at 10 a.m. But I won't this Saturday because we're having a holiday with the grandkids. So catch you next Thursday at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time here on YouTube Live.